Thank you for visiting my channel, Thinking Like a Virtuous Woman, where I inspire women to think like the woman in Proverbs 31, spiritually, financially, and also relationally. So today I'm going to be teaching some and reminding others that just because a man settles down with us does not necessarily mean that he loves us. I say remind because sometimes women have to be reminded. There's some women that have to be taught because they just don't know, but then some women just have to be reminded. And I can relate to that so much. I know from experience what it's like to love a man who does not love me back in the way that I love him, or does not love me back at all. So I wanted to just give some encouragement and also some empowerment to some women that may be out there today who's struggling with the fact that the man that they love does not love them back. Before I talk more about this, I just want to go to the Bible and I want to talk about the story of Jacob and Leah and Rachel. And that's going to be found in Genesis 30. I'm going to start at verse 14, but just to give you guys a little bit of context. So Jacob's father, which is Isaac, had told Jacob not to marry any of the women from Canaan. And he told him to go to his cousin's Laban's house to go marry one of his daughters. So Jacob arrives at Laban's house and then, he's working for him for free. So in verse 14 is where Laban tells Jacob that he doesn't want him to continue working for him for free. So I'm just going to read that part for you. Verse 14, Laban exclaimed, "You really are my own flesh and blood." After Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, "You shouldn't work for me without pay just because we're relatives. Tell me how much your wages should be." Now Laban had two daughters. The older daughter was named Leah and the younger one was Rachel. There was no sparkle in Leah's eyes, but Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, "I'll work for you for 7 years if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife." "Agreed," Laban replied. "I'd rather give her to you than to anyone else. Stay and work for me." So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. Finally, the time came for him to marry her. "I have fulfilled my agreement," Jacob said to Laban. "Now give me my wife so I can sleep with her." So Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood and prepared a wedding feast. But that night, when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob and he slept with her. Laban had given Leah a servant, Zilpah, to be her maid. But when Jacob woke in the morning, it was Leah. "What have you done to me?" Leah raged at Laban. "I worked 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me?" "It's not our custom here to marry off a younger daughter ahead of the firstborn," Laban replied. "But wait until the bridal week is over, then we'll give you Rachel too, provided you promise to work another 7 years for me." So Jacob agreed to work 7 more years. A week after Jacob had married Leah, Laban gave him Rachel too. Laban gave Rachel a servant, Bilhah, to be her maid. I may be saying that wrong. So Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved her much more than Leah. He then stayed and worked for Laban the additional 7 years. So you can continue reading that later on your own, but Leah ended up having children by Jacob. She had multiple children. Meanwhile, Rachel was not getting pregnant. And that's a whole nother story in itself, how Rachel ended up giving her maid to Jacob to get pregnant. But I shared that to say that Leah ended up having children with Jacob, and Rachel did as well eventually. But I share that story to share with you how Jacob, he really loved Rachel, but he settled for Leah. Now, when Jacob woke up, he could have easily said, "You know what? I don't want Leah. I'm gone. If I can't have Rachel, I'm gone." But because Jacob loved Rachel so much, he was willing to continue to settle with Leah just so he could have Rachel. And not only that, he worked 7 years for Rachel and then another 7 years just to be able to marry her, even after finding out that Laban had made him marry the wrong woman. So that in itself is evidence of how much he really loved Rachel, but it doesn't negate the fact that he settled with Leah. How many men today are settling with a Leah, meanwhile are in love with Rachel? Maybe Rachel left him. Maybe Rachel doesn't want to have anything to do with him, and so he's settling with Leah. I don't want you to be a Leah. I don't want to be a Leah. I understand what it's like to love a man and you feel like you're the best thing for him. And I know what it's like to want to prove yourself. I can just imagine like Leah wanting to prove how much better she is than Rachel. I remember at one point in that actual book later on, I remember Leah actually saying something to Rachel about she stole her husband Meanwhile, Rachel was the one that he was supposed to marry in the first place. So I remember Leah getting big-headed about it. But I don't want to be a Leah. I don't want to be that person who have to argue with another woman. I don't want to be that woman who has to prove myself to Jacob that I'm the woman you should pick. I'm the best one. And I've been there. I've been that type of woman who I said I'm going to just sex him enough till he knows that I'm the best for him. I'm going to cook for him. I'm going to wash his clothes, be a stepmama to his kids. I know what that's like to have to prove yourself. But the man that God has for you, you will not have to prove yourself to him. So I want you to rest in that. And if you're in a situation right now where you're constantly having to prove yourself to a man, I want you to get out that situation right now. You are much better than that. You are too beautiful, too valuable, too precious to be trying to prove yourself to a man. If he can't see that, then he's not for you. And I love how the Bible said that Adam knew who Eve was when his eyes opened. And I believe that our husbands will know who we are when his eyes are open to us. And you can just rest in that fact that if you have to prove to him, if you have to open his eyes to you for him, you got to open his eyes for him, then he is not the one. Do not settle for being a Leah. You want to be the Rachel. And sis, when a man is in love with you, you will know. I know the difference from when I was with a man who didn't love me versus a man who did love me. And sis, you deserve much better than having to prove yourself to this man. And as you know, a man does not have to love you to settle with you. A man will sleep with you. He will get you pregnant, have kids with you. He will even move in with you and be with you for years and really not love you, really not want to be with you. He will settle for you, but not necessarily love you. You don't want to be the woman that a man settles for. You want to be the woman that he can't live without. You want to be the woman that he's willing to do anything for. The way that Jacob was willing to do anything for Rachel, you want a man who's willing to do anything for you. Now, if nothing that I said was able to convince you, I just want you to think about this one thing, okay? Now, imagine that you are with this man, you are his Leah, and his Rachel comes along and wants to be with him. He is going to leave you to be with his Rachel. Now, do you want to be with a man that at any moment he will leave you to go be with another woman? You don't want to be a man's option. You want to be his one and only choice. You want to be his priority. You don't want to be with a man that at any moment, if this other woman comes along, all she needs to do is call him, text him, tell him, I want to be with you, and he's going to be gone in a minute. He's out of there. You don't want to be in that type of situation. If you know that you are his Leah, get out of that situation right now. Now, some woman may be a man's Leah and not know that. If this message is for you, you know. You know if I'm talking to you. And I wish and I hope and I pray that you take this as your confirmation that you need to get out of there. I have been there, and it is not a good feeling. I have been a Leah. I've been a Rachel before, but I've also been a Leah, and that's not a good feeling. And even when I was a Rachel, I felt bad for the Leah because I'm a woman, and I felt bad for that other woman. But I was a Leah. I don't want to be a Leah. I don't want you to be a Leah. If you know you are a Leah, get out of the situation now. So I suggest you go ahead and read that story on your own. And I hope and pray that this story found you in a place where you're trying to make a decision on whether you should leave or whether you should stay with a man who does not value you. And I hope that this video was able to give you some clarity and to remind you and empower you that you are beautiful, you are precious, you are valuable. The Bible says that a virtuous woman is far above rubies. Are you a virtuous woman? If you consider yourself a virtuous woman, then you know that you are worth way more than a man treating you, settling for you like a Leah when you know that you are a Rachel. As always, feel free to email me with any prayer requests, questions. If you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like me to cover, I will leave my email down below in the description box. And again, thank you so much for visiting my channel, Thinking Like a Virtuous Woman, where I inspire women to think like the woman in Proverbs 31, spiritually, financially, and relationally. Be blessed.